Hi, I am Claire Boteler. My presentation today is looking at ocean carbon in the Northwest Atlantic. With atmospheric carbon dioxide increasing over time, as seen in the left figure, the ocean takes in more carbon. The extra carbon is a consequence of human activities and is referred to as carbon's anthropogenic component. This causes the ocean to become more acidic, which affects the marine ecosystem. The Northwest Atlantic Ocean is an important carbon sink, as shown in the right figure, taking in large amounts of anthropogenic CO2 compared to the rest of the ocean. Few direct ocean carbon observations are available, and due to a seasonal sampling bias, we have especially few in the winter when the sink is strongest. As such, we question if summer-only data is sufficient to estimate ocean carbon's anthropogenic increase. The plot shows carbon observations versus time, and they are colored blue for winter, red for summer, and gray for spring and fall. The trend lines of winter and summer data are very similar in the deeper depths of the ocean, as shown in the bottom right two figures, but quite different in the surface waters, as shown on the left. We wonder if this is an artifact of sampling bias, or if winter and summer have different trends. To help answer this, we will separate ocean carbon into its sources of variability and reconstruct a monthly time series estimate of dissolved inorganic carbon, which is the amount of carbon dissolved in the ocean. When separating dissolved inorganic carbon into its components, or sources of variability, first we will look at its mean behavior. This will vary based on depth, with the surface having a distinctive yearly seasonal cycle, and in the deeper waters, the seasonal cycle's amplitude reduces so much it appears constant. Next, we will look at carbon's expected fluctuations that would be associated with natural changes in temperature and salinity. These first two components would describe carbon's natural behavior. The remaining excess carbon is assumed to be due to anthropogenic sources. Throughout most of this presentation, I will refer to dissolved inorganic carbon as total carbon in order to distinguish it from its components. The GLODAP dataset provides observations of carbon and predictor variables of potential temperature and practical salinity. These observations were sampled at irregular times and locations, as shown by the spatial plot of carbon on the left. Our observations occur mostly in the Atlantic, Arctic, and North Atlantic Drift Longhurst provinces. Our analysis focuses on temporal trends, so we have assumed negligible spatial variations occur within and between these Longhurst provinces. The left plot shows how carbon's variability changes with depth. Based off this, we have separated our data into 3 layers, and we'll run the analysis for each layer individually. Our first step is to deseasonalize our data using the monthly means. The monthly mean of carbon in the second layer is shown on the top right. It is mostly flat with some wiggles. We repeat this yearly cycle for 26 years, producing a monthly estimate of the seasonal behavior with confidence intervals in gray. This will be useful when we reconstruct our estimate of total carbon. Next, we look at carbon's natural variability by fitting a linear regression to the deseasonalized data. We used only the first 2 years because we wanted a relationship that was free from anthropogenic changes. We now use these regression coefficients in dynamic linear regression. With this method, we can have all our coefficients vary over time. However, we purposefully keep constant the relationship with temperature and salinity while allowing the intercept to vary over time. This is so it can account for the excess carbon not explained by temperature and salinity. Dynamic linear regression uses a pair of equations, a prediction equation and an observation equation. We sequentially predict our intercept, beta 0, at each time step using a correlated random walk. This function says the next time step follows the trend depicted from the previous 2 time steps. Then, if observations are available, we update the prediction using the observations in a regression equation. How much we update our prediction is influenced by the error terms W and V. Today, we used rough estimates for these variances, but determining appropriate values is a research question we are still working on. The right plot shows the result from running the dynamic linear regression, showing how our intercept varies to account for the excess carbon. You might notice the plot starts at 0. This is because we subtracted off the initial value so we can more clearly represent the excess carbon from the natural variations. The last thing to point out in our method is that we used a sample from the glorious reanalysis product to provide monthly values of temperature and salinity, which we used in our fitted regression to provide a monthly estimate of carbon's natural variations. We now have separate ocean carbon components, and adding them back together gives us the top plot of our total carbon estimate in black with confidence intervals in gray. The red dots are monthly averages of our carbon observations, and we see that our estimate matches the observations quite well. They may be fitting a bit too well as a consequence of the variance parameters chosen I made earlier. But it still illustrates the method is adaptable to when observations are available. In total carbon, its main behavior is an increasing trend of 0.71 carbon units per year, which is the same trend as excess carbon shown on the bottom right, showing that the middle layer, excess carbon, is its dominant source of variability. We can now look at the equivalent plots for the deepest layer, which has similar conclusions as the middle layer. Moving on to the surface, the dominant feature of total carbon is its seasonal cycle. From just visual inspection, an increasing anthropogenic signal is not apparent, but taking the trend says it's increasing at 0.85 units of carbon per year. If we take the trend lines of winter and summer values, we find that they are shifted with the same slope. Now, comparing with the plot of GLODAC observations we saw earlier, if we compare the slopes given in the legends, we see that summer-only data underestimates carbon's anthropogenic increase. Also, that unequal sampling of the winter data can provide misleading estimates of the increasing trend. It is thus recommended to first estimate an equally spaced time series of total carbon and its components before diagnosing the anthropogenic signal in ocean carbon. Thank you.